Hey good people, and welcome back to the channel. In a few moments, you're going to hear my thoughts and feelings on episode 6 of this season's Put a Ring on It. And if there's anything that I can say about this episode, it's that all these folks need some serious therapy and some help from Jesus, because what they're doing just isn't working. But before we get into things, if you're new to the channel or a returning visitor and you want to support the platform, then feel free to hit the subscribe button and help me reach 1,000 before the year's end. But without any further delay, let's jump into the review. Episode 6 picks up where the last episode left off, with Charlie threatening to embarrass Otis. We then hear Charlie threatening to leave and asking Otis for the key. And I'm wondering to myself, is Charlie asking for the key to the car or the key to the house? Either seems a bit rash to me, but before things can escalate, Dr. Nicole intervenes and works her magic to calm Charlie down. When Otis and Charlie are asked if they want to go on third dates with Milan and Brent, they both decline to do so. However, Charlie feels that Otis will still message Milan behind her back, and that gets under Otis' skin. We then switch gears, and the spotlight shines on Shay and Alfonso's disaster double date from last episode. Shay gives her side of the story, which sounds completely crazy, and towards the end of her story, she proclaims herself to be Alfonso's spouse. Now, unless you were born yesterday, then you and I both know that a spouse is someone who you're legally married to. But Shay doesn't think this. Even as Dr. Nicole uses patience to try to explain to Shay what a spouse is, Shay isn't trying to hear any of it, which makes me question the world that Shay lives in. Shay is then asked what she wants out of the process, and as she's talking, Alfonso can't help but laugh at her, and this causes Dr. Nicole to check him. And I can understand why Dr. Nicole did that, but I also feel that Alfonso knows that Shay is a little cuckoo, and is intentionally omitting her own faults from the problems that she's discussing. Shay and Alfonso are then asked if they want to go on second dates with the two folks who saw Shay act a fool at the restaurant, and they both decline to do so, but in the back of my mind, I'm sure that those two folks already refuse to be involved with their foolishness going forward. Shorty and Kenny then talk about their blind dates, and when they're given the option to go on second dates, Kenny declines to go on his second date, while Shorty agrees to go on hers. And here's what I'll say about Shorty and Kenny, at least on this episode. It's painfully clear that the two of them are on this show for different reasons. Shorty, in my opinion, is using the show to expose the issues in her relationship and help sabotage her relationship to Kenny in hopes that she can finally move on because she feels that he won't let her move on. Kenny, in my opinion, is using the show to prove to Shorty that he can resist temptation and he isn't going anywhere unless she decides to end things. It's pretty clear that their relationship is going nowhere and there's no way to make things any better. Shorty and Kenny also go out on a date later on in the episode, but it was essentially a complete waste of time because they spend the majority of the date arguing about the same issues. Towards the end of the group session, Dr. Nicole assigns the cast members the task of meeting with their closest family members to get guidance on the issues in their relationships. As the group leaves to go back home, Charlie takes the car keys and leaves Otis without a ride to get back home, which is pretty petty in my opinion and proves that Charlie didn't take any of Dr. Nicole's advice. Although this episode is entitled Family Matters Part 1, we only get to see two cast members meeting their family members. So to me that was a bit of false advertisement, or just a case of bad editing on the show's part. We see Otis meeting with his father, and right off the bat we learn that his father is someone who Otis looks up to and respects because his parents have been married for 40 years. Otis and his father talk about the topic of communication and how men should handle communicating and receiving communication with women. Otis then shares his problems with Charlie, and I feel that Otis' father gave some good advice, but the advice ultimately wouldn't help somebody like Otis, because Charlie seems to be the type of woman who buys into the happy wife, happy life mentality. And in my opinion, how can a man truly be happy in a marriage, let alone a relationship, if he's only worried about making the woman happy and not his own happiness? Otis' father shares that the secret to handling arguments with women is to never add fuel to the fire and to not give them the same energy as they are angry and voicing frustration. And in theory, that seems to be fine, but I have to ask this question. Why should a man have to subject himself to verbal abuse and emasculation from one woman when he could just meet another woman who doesn't have those toxic traits? Sure, couples argue, but not all couples carry that toxic energy and have communication issues that people like Otis and Charlie have. We then see Shay meeting up with her mother and aunt to talk about problems in her relationship. And at the root of it all, Shay doesn't feel accepted by Alfonso's family, and while that may be a valid feeling, I have to ask if Shay has ever popped off at Alfonso's family like she's done with Dr. Nicole, Alfonso, and Alfonso's blind dates. Because if the answer is yes, then I can see why Alfonso's family doesn't accept her, and they have the right to feel that way. But Shay's mother and her aunt encourage Shay to draw boundaries with Alfonso and let Alfonso know that she will leave him if those boundaries are crossed. I think that their advice to Shay was good, but incomplete, because they have to know that Shay can be a terror if she doesn't get her way. So I wish that they had just held Shay more accountable to some degree. But back to Charlie and Otis. Charlie prepares for her blind date, and it's clear by the outfit that she's wearing that she's trying to get a reaction out of Otis. Otis takes the high road and uses the moment to apologize to Charlie about the whole Milan situation, but Charlie is having none of it. It's clear that Charlie wants to hurt Otis the same, if not more, than he hurt her with the whole Milan situation. And in my opinion, the whole "I'm the victim" act from the last episode was just BS from Charlie. Charlie is essentially putting the onus on Otis to meet her where she is, while failing to take any accountability for her part in why their relationship is failing. But Charlie goes on a blind date with a guy named Chris, and while she considers Chris to be attractive, this guy is clearly a walking, breathing red flag, to which Charlie seemingly entertains. The bulk of their conversation revolved around sex and how his ex was a super freak. Charlie was blushing from the stories that Chris told her, and it's clear that she's going to use Chris to make Otis jealous, especially after Chris admitted to having experience dating other men's girlfriends. But the episode ends with Charlie meeting up with Otis to essentially hear from Otis how he was wrong and how he plans to beg to get her back. Otis didn't give Charlie the satisfaction, and as a result, Charlie seemingly ends their relationship. And if I were Otis, I would have texted Milan right then and there and told her that I was finally a free agent. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, I will give this episode a solid 7. Not because of the drama that these couples were going through, but because this episode with these particular cast members are showing all the sane folks out there what not to do when you're having relationship problems and trying to make things work. These folks are completely nuts, and they're essentially giving relationship counselors plenty of gems to use for their clients. But this marks the end of my review. Feel free to leave any comment below in the comment section, and I'll be sure to reply to each and every comment. Until next time, stay tuned and stay safe. Peace.